Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Join me at the 10th Annual Media Excellence Awards on January 18th in Beverly Hills, California. The attendees and I will be celebrating innovation and leadership in technology and entertainment. There are 20 award categories with 1,000 nominees. These awards honor those who are creating groundbreaking technology to better our lives and celebrate the hard work, determination, and brilliance in the leadership within the companies which create the new world we live in today. I will be recording nominees and winners at the awards. For tickets and more information, go to MediaXAwards.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Mark Deetjen. He's the Senior Vice President of Programming and Operations at Buzzer. Mark, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you've done and are currently doing is actually really interesting to me. And as we kind of get through the interview, basically you've worked on some huge stuff that I think a lot of people watch kind of every day. But maybe before we kind of get into your day-to-day job and kind of what you do, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm excited to be here too. So, I am one of the few native Angelenos. So I was born and bred here in LA, and stayed here mainly because I kind of grew up in the business. My dad worked for Disney for many, many years.
Very cool.
And so I kind of grew up with a taste for it. And even though my dad didn't really want me to go into it, I kind of found my way back to it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So walk me through kind of, you went to university. What did you take in university? And then we'll kind of continue from there.
Yeah. So I went to USC.
Okay.
Undergraduate. And I mean, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I went there really to swim.
Okay.
I was a swimmer in college. And, I was a business major, marketing major, undergraduate. And, halfway through my career there, I ended up getting sick and having to retire from swimming. So really started focusing more on media and things like that. And my undergraduate, I left really focusing on advertising. And I worked for Team One Advertising here in LA, the Lexus account, and on Forex Beer and Yonex tennis rackets and golf clubs. It was like some fun accounts to really work on, and learned a lot. But really, my passion was more kind of on the entertainment side. So I ended up I went back to grad school. I went back to USC Film School and got my master's there. And I was a Starkey. It's a small producing program at USC. And then came out and worked. And then, I ended up finding my way to Disney, oddly enough, but at a production company. So I did feature film development and production. Worked on movies like Mission to Mars and Mighty Joe Young and things like that. And then the industry right around 2002 went through a monumental shift.
Okay.
When I got to Disney, there were 82 producer deals. I worked for one of those producers. And when I left, there were 8.
Oh, wow.
So,
huge.
And all of the jobs that went along with that, the development jobs, the assistance jobs, the VP jobs, all of those jobs that went along with each one of those producers, they disappeared. And they disappeared industry-wide. So, it was funny. For probably about 2 years there, I think I probably interviewed for 12, 15 different jobs, only one of which they actually hired somebody.
Wow.
So like either the producer's deal went away, or they say, oh, well, we figured out, the budget's changed, right? So then it was, we figured out how to run our business with one less person. Or it was really, really an amazing thing. And I just ended up focusing on new media.
Okay.
And that's, and the great thing is that, I was very fortunate that I had great relationships at many of the talent agencies here in LA, and they were also exploring new media at the time. They were just starting to get into it. So I ended up meeting with the team over at William Morris, which is now William Morris Endeavor, and they said, hey, so we've got this cell phone company. And, at the time, mobile entertainment wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
And my reaction was, I know how to make a phone call on my phone. So so I met with them, and it was a really interesting business proposition because it was Amp'd Mobile. And for those who remember Amp'd Mobile,
yeah, I do for sure.
it was one of the very first cell phone companies that was 100% focused on what you could do with your phone, finding entertainment on your phone and videos and things like that. Verizon had Vcast at the time, which was probably the most popular entertainment portal, but we were 100% focused on entertainment. And I went in and I really helped establish the entertainment profile in the sense of, deals with studios and with the television networks and things like that. And it really started off with clips of shows. And I'll never forget that Aqua Teen Hunger Force was our number one. People would watch those videos more than anything else at that time.
I was probably one of those really people.
Yeah, and it was a real education in kind of what worked on mobile and what worked in a digital landscape. And we really were, we were really breaking a lot of ground there. And I went from being a traditional development production executive to learning how to read XML, right? So really kind of getting my feet in, getting into the weeds and knowing how the technology worked, transcoding on the fly, all those things that are commonplace for us now.
Sure.
Those were all brand new in 2005 when we launched. So, and then also worked on one of the very first linear streaming products, which was Amp TV, which we had MTV and we had, a number of the Viacom products and channels that we would stream live over your phone. So, that was a great way for me to kind of just get into a new digital landscape using the things that I had learned, both at school and at Disney. So, and then that's kind of how I ended up in the digital space.
Sure.
I went from there. I went to Sony, and I was originally hired there to help develop a lot of people don't know, but Sony owns about 160 television networks around the world.
Oh wow!
Very few in the United States.
Interesting.
But a ton overseas, and super successful in countries like India, Central Europe, Italy. So really, really, really powerful. And then Singapore is their hub in Asia. So Korea they're very strong in Korea as well. So they have the number one cable channel in Japan, which is called Animax, which is an anime channel. And so I really went in to help revitalize what they were doing on the web, which was convert their websites from basically marketing platforms saying, hey, these channels are on these shows are on at this time on this channel, to being a portal for content, whether it had been clips, catch-up television, that kind of stuff, and really made that transition to a more digital entertainment websites. So while I was there doing that, they decided they wanted to launch channels in the United States. And one day they came to me and they say, hey, can you program a movie channel? And I said, yeah, sure, of course I can. Never having programmed fully programmed an entire television network ever. I said, yeah, sure, of course I can do that. So they said, great, here's a list. By Monday, can you have a month for us? And this was Friday afternoon.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, of course, no problem. I can do that. I spent the entire weekend trying to figure out what I was going to do. Luckily, from being in film school, I was really fortunate that I was super familiar with the Sony library, with the Columbia library. So I knew the movies. I'd seen most of them. You know, so that was and it was a kind of a TCM type of channel. So it was really focused on the older movies in the library. And I put that together. I walked in on Monday. They took a look at it. They said, this is great. We're going to go pitch this to DirecTV on Thursday. Can you come with us? And,
that's amazing.
So, you know, all of a sudden I found myself with a completely new job at Sony. And it was great. It was one of those, like, it was unexpected. It was challenging. I was doing something completely new. To be perfectly honest, I was completely out of my depth at the very beginning. But, you know, it was something that I also had the luck of having worked on the operations side at Amp'd, where I was able to handle the operations side of the channel as well. So I was able to do dual duty, both as a technical person as well as a creative person. So I did that for a little while. We launched Sony Movie Channel. We launched Cine Sony, which is a Spanish language channel, and it was again, luck. You know, smiled upon me. I'm Cuban. I speak fluent Spanish. I know the marketplace. So, you know, I continued to program that channel as well. And then we launched Get TV, which was a .2.
Okay, sure.
Which brings me to kind of where TV sits now and the challenges that cable operators are having with cord cutting and things like that. And these .2 channels really provided an interesting business, you know, model where you were going back to traditional broadcast TV. So the cord cutters could get you via their digital antenna, but you were still getting cable coverage through your affiliations with whoever your parent channels were. So for Get TV, it was Univision was really the big partner, and so wherever Univision had cable coverage, they used their put with the cable company to launch Get, and we did the same thing at Buzzer when I came over to Fremantle. Fremantle owns the largest library of game shows in the world.
Sure.
And they decided, and we live in a world where all of a sudden now the long tail of old content allows you, and combined with digital platforms, allows you to really monetize that. And that's what we did here. We took Family Feud with Richard Dawson and Match Game with Gene Rayburn and Super Password and Press Your Luck and Supermarket Sweep and all of these old TV game shows that were kind of languishing in our library and maybe getting a little bit of play on Game Show Network, but not a ton. And we built an entire channel around it.
Okay,
and we've seen great response from the audience. It's a super passionate. I would equate it to the sci-fi audience.
Okay,
They're really passionate about the genre, and we have a super loyal fan base. And the great thing about it is that, as you know, obviously Steve Harvey's Family Feud was already a big success before us, but since we launched, ABC brought back To Tell the Truth. They brought back Match Game with Alec Baldwin, and
sure.
We've really been able to do dual duty in that kind of revival. One is having all of the old classics of those game shows available to an audience that loves them, but also leverage that fan base that is so loyal to our channel with the new production and say, okay, here's To Tell the Truth. Here's a marathon of To Tell the Truth. Don't forget that Sunday it starts on ABC at 8 o'clock. So then all of a sudden, Fremantle being the producer of To Tell the Truth on ABC is leveraging its asset in Buzzer to make that show a success.
Interesting.
It's hyper targeted, right? You're speaking to the very fans who are going to go to ABC to watch that show.
Yeah, that's actually quite fascinating. And you're right. Like, I do find myself, like, I'm 34, just so you have some context, but I do find myself sometimes watching some of the shows that you grew up watching kind of in the late 80s, early 90s when they're like reruns, and you're like, I remember watching this as a kid, right? And that's basically, it sounds like you're almost capturing that same kind of market, right? Like, people love the stuff that they kind of grew up watching. At least in my experience, they seem to. And it sounds like you have the same success.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing a really nice synergy between production and the channel. And at the end of the day, the channel is offering us the ability to go back into our library, which, by the way, is all on tape. It's on 3/4. I mean, we've got stuff that's still on Kineoscope.
Wow.
That yeah, exactly. I mean, we found, we went back. So when To Tell the Truth launched on ABC, we wanted to do something really special. So we started going back into our library and seeing what was available. And then we called the guys at CBS, who aired it originally. And they had just updated their database. This is talking about how new technology allows you to find old things and leverage, kind of older technology.
Sure.
They had just redone their database. So they searched by truth.
Oh, interesting.
And it came up that they had the film stock of Nothing But the Truth, which was the name of the original pilot of To Tell the Truth.
Wow.
And it hadn't been seen since the 50s when it was originally aired.
That's cool.
So it was awesome. We were able to find this. We sent it out. We remastered it. We really cleaned it up. It was beautiful. Mike Wallace was 60 Minutes was the host. And all of a sudden, we were able to do something really, really special. We were able to show the original Nothing But the Truth pilot episode on Sunday before the launch of To Tell the Truth, I think, which was on Tuesday on ABC. Sure. It was such a great synergistic opportunity for the company. And you get those people who are they're such big fans, and then they find out that it's coming back, and they get even more excited. So we just went out and got Supermarket Sweep,
sure,
and we're bringing it back. It starts on the 15th. It starts next Monday, and as soon as we announced it, the whole fan base went bananas because they'd been asking for it since we launched.
Really?
And so it took us a little while to track down all the tapes and do everything and get them sorted out and get them ready for air. But we're bringing it back, and the fans have gone bananas for Supermarket Sweep. We're talking about a show that aired, predominantly on cable television.
Yeah.
In the 90s and 2000s.
I remember that show.
There was a version from the 60s also that we're not going to air just yet.
Okay.
But look, I mean, you're looking at a show that was a cable show from the 90s and 2000s, which has such a great following, and people are so excited to see it come back. And who's to say that excitement doesn't allow us to then sell it in somewhere else, or bring it back as a modern show or anything like that. The good thing about it is that all of a sudden we're generating revenue on this old content, which allows us to take it from 3/4-inch tape and digitize it.
Sure.
Right? So now all of a sudden we have a file-based library that we can now leverage on Amazon Prime. We can put it on any of the streaming services. We are available on Amazon Prime already. So, and those are shocking numbers. You're seeing people watching, millions of minutes of our shows, which look, we knew that they were popular, but we didn't realize that they were that popular. And we've been so pleasantly surprised by the folks at Amazon. It's great. And it really is helping us build a brand around our vintage game show content.
Sure. No, that's great. And that's the one, well, there's a handful of things I like about the internet, probably more than that. But what was really cool about just being able to digitize stuff and put it back out there is like, you can basically watch content created within the last, like, a bunch of decades, right? Where,
yeah,
like, not that long ago, like even 10 years ago, that wasn't even possible. Like, there's no way you guys would have done this 10 years ago, because it would have been so crazy in the amount of work and time and effort to do this. But now you guys can go back. If the content's already digitized, it's even easier, right? And then, like you just mentioned, you can put it out to Amazon or Netflix or both or whoever, right? Like, I get that there's a bunch of licensing things, but then it can also be put out in countries that never saw it originally, right? Just through the internet, which is, I love that, right? Being able to access like almost anything that was kind of ever created back, you know, even potentially since like the 50s, like you mentioned, which is really, really cool, right?
Oh, it's great. It's great. But it also, it's great from a consumer standpoint, but from somebody who owns the IP, it also poses a huge challenge as far as piracy is concerned, right?
Oh, sure.
And that's always that's the double-edged sword. It's you're trying to balance okay, well, our content is out there. How much do we police it?
Sure.
And if we over-police it, does it alienate the audience that's consuming it?
Yeah.
So that they wouldn't consume it if we were to bring it back in a new form. Right? So you're constantly fighting internally. You're constantly fighting that battle of how much do we police, do we not police? I mean, we're very fortunate at Fremantle that we are one of what's called YouTube's biggest professional production companies.
Okay.
We get more views. Than we're one of the top 5 professional production companies that gets the most views on YouTube. And you'd be surprised how much of that traffic is driven by kind of old clips of Richard Dawson falling down laughing because of a crazy answer that he got on Family Feud. I mean, you'd be really surprised. There's some of those things out there that have millions and millions of views.
Sure.
Right? So then we say, from our perspective, a lot of things that we look at, we just say, hey, look, those are fans who are consuming that and they're really enjoying that brand, and they're going to be fans. They're going to be fans of Family Feud.
Sure.
So we're not going to clamp down on that. For older content that people are consuming from a brand standpoint, it's good for the brand, right?
Yep. No, I 100% agree. That's actually quite interesting, and that you're like open to kind of talking about some of that stuff, because obviously that kind of the piracy issues always kind of been interesting, and it's a huge challenge, right? And you kind of mentioned it earlier with like the cord cutters and stuff, and I think part of the problem, at least from my kind of side of it, is sometimes it's like more convenient and being able to watch it whenever you kind of want or on the device you want, right? And so I love kind of how, right? And so I think part of the problem is, and it looks like you guys are kind of working to solve that, is putting it on the platforms where people consume content, right? Because I pay for YouTube TV. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's Google's kind of like
totally.
Live streaming plus a PVR in the cloud. And my favorite thing about that service is I can PVR to the cloud. That I'm not tied to some box in my basement, right? So if I'm traveling, but I want to see the latest version or the latest episode of whatever show, I can just like pull it up on my phone and watch it before I kind of fall asleep in bed, or my iPad or tablet or whatever, right? And so for me, that's just like a convenience that I'm willing to pay for, right? And so I love the fact that you guys are kind of moving content to Prime or these other kind of streaming things, or posting it online or YouTube, right? Because that's where people consume content, right? And I think that's probably at the core of maybe the piracy issue. Isn't necessarily people don't want to pay for the content. They just want the content wherever they want to consume it. Have you kind of found that as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a really good observation. Is that, as a TV programmer, you have to, over the last 10 years, you've had to really change your paradigm of what does TV mean.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So, TV used to be the box in your living room that, you either got over the air or with a cable or satellite supplier or whatever. And you lean back and you watched it in your living room. And that's where that happened. And the rest of your life was, you may be on a computer and you may be doing email and you may go watch somebody's cat video on YouTube, but it's changed. It's changed. People want professionally produced content anywhere and everywhere. And it's,
sure.
and that screen is no longer just the big one in your living room. It's the little one in your pocket.
Yeah.
It's the one, that at lunchtime, if you missed a show and you want to catch up on it at lunch, it's the one in your office.
Yeah.
It's the tablet that you may be, looking at in the doctor's office before you go in. It really is this. It's the screen. It's not the location, right? So because of that, you have to be open to new platforms like Amazon, like YouTube television, like Hulu.
Sure,
there's even some other ones. There's other ones like Pluto TV that are out there. That's a really interesting business model because it's all ad based and it's free to the consumer. So and so then you also have to, it challenges your business models, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the famous line. I can't remember who said it, but analog dollars becoming digital dimes. Okay. I mean, I can see how you might want to go there, but what we're finding is that it's incremental revenue. Okay. We're not really seeing a decline because our business isn't really. It's not subscriber based, right? So we're not getting MSO fees like ESPN, right? So if the number of subscribers to cable television goes down and ESPN, goes down by 10 million homes and ESPN sees a giant hit because of that, we're not necessarily worried about that.
Sure.
We're looking for eyeballs. And if that eyeball comes on a phone or if it comes on a tablet or if it comes on somebody's TV through cable or through the digital antenna, we're an ad-based business. We're about eyeballs. And that really positions us well for a digital environment where you're monetizing that eyeball wherever that eyeball might be.
Sure. No, I 100% agree with you. Because, I even, I'm guilty of this. I'll watch something on, say, I'll Chromecast to the TV, and then I'll pick back up the same episode back on my phone, and then watch maybe another 10, 20 minutes of it, and then I might pick back up on the TV or a tablet or something. So, I might consume the entire hour-long show on, 3 or 4 different screens, right? But
sure.
Right? And so I think that's kind of, I love the fact that you guys are basically doing that, right? And I think that's actually really cool that you guys as kind of a company and putting out content, kind of fresh content and past content, I think is really cool. But I'm curious then to get your thoughts on what advice do you kind of give somebody that's maybe looking to get into the business? Because you read online sometimes that it's all doom and gloom, and then you read kind of it's, doing fine and kind of everywhere in between. And you've kind of talked throughout the show that, look, we're modernizing this thing. We're taking old content, bringing it to new devices, new screen sizes. It sounds like you guys are very much hey, we're adapting with what the users and the new market and the new industry are looking for. But what advice do you kind of give to people that are maybe looking to get into the entertainment kind of space?
Look, I think that, first of all, it's become so, the costs of creating good content has dropped significantly.
Sure.
Right? The fixed costs of camera packages and lighting equipment, and I mean, it's really made it quite egalitarian as far as production is concerned. What's gone crazy are the talent costs, right?
Okay.
So, shooting a pilot with kind of unknown actors is pretty reasonable, right? You can do that.
Okay.
But really for me, the new wave here is flexibility,
Okay.
right? Like, to me, that's the catchphrase that I discuss a lot, which is flexibility. You cannot be stuck in the mindset that my content is only going to be seen in the movie theater, or my content is made for TV, or my content is made for a mobile device. Sure, that might be your primary outlet, but quite frankly, there's a really good chance that it's going to be seen on all of them.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to be ready for that, and you have to have a mindset of kind of ubiquitous content.
Okay.
Right? That content goes everywhere. The content's available everywhere your consumer is. So, from that aspect, when we launched Buzzer, we said, okay, we're a TV channel, and when we launched, that's exactly what we were, right? So, to a certain extent, what you're trying to do is like, okay, I want to get my core business right. Because
Sure.
if I don't get my core business right, all of these ancillary areas aren't going to do anything for me, right? So, the first year and a half, we hunkered down and we really looked at that. And then more and more, we started looking at things like Amazon Prime. And we also had to get to a certain volume of content. Look, we've got a library of 40,000 episodes of game shows.
Wow.
Like, that's a lot, and it's growing every single year, right? Because we're making Family Feud, we're making To Tell the Truth, we just brought back Beat the Clock, and so we're making new content all the time. So that library continues to grow. First things first, all new content has to be in a digital format, right? That's a no-brainer, right? So from that aspect, moving forward, everything new has to be digital. Well, we have to go back and take those 40,000, and we have to make those 40,000 episodes consumable on all platforms.
Right.
So I'd say we're probably about 10% in the last 2.5 years. We've gotten about 10% of the way through that library.
Wow.
We just brought all of those operations in-house. We used to have vendors doing it. Now we're doing it all internally because we're doing so much of it, and then we're leveraging it on different platforms. That it makes more sense for us to do it in-house, which allows us to do more, right?
Sure.
So
yeah.
So it's like, make sure that your content's in a format that everybody can consume, and then when you come in and you're whether it's you're always starting at the assistant level, but or if you're coming out of grad school, maybe you're at a manager or director level. It's about having that mindset of, okay, this is what it is today. This is what content production and consumers look like today. You've got to be ready for it to change tomorrow. It will change that fast.
Sure.
YouTube TV came almost out of nowhere.
Yeah, totally.
And it took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, look, Sling TV.
Yeah.
I think that that's a great example of a tradition. Dish is a really good example of a traditional media company knowing how things are changing. So, obviously Dish bought Sling and they incorporated it into all of their boxes when they did the Hopper. So then all of a sudden you've got your cable package, which you can watch anywhere around the world on your mobile device through their app.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Yep.
You can get at your DVR. You can do all of those things. And then they came up with a great product, which I think it's called Primetime Anytime.
Okay.
Which, instead of using your own DVR and using up one of the spaces in your DVR to record any primetime show, they automatically record all 4 major networks into the cloud.
Oh, very cool.
And you can access all of those shows from your phone, from your laptop, from your tablet, wherever it is you are. You can access all of those shows on a time shifted basis for 7 days.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, and if you can't get to it, you can go into it. You can highlight it. Or you can say save it to my DVR so you can watch it later.
Right. That's
Another
really
great.
cool.
So and then came Sling TV, which was like a pared down for cord cutters, because they realized that people were cutting the cord and they wanted to get content some other way. They didn't want to be tied to a box. So I think Dish really has been it's an interesting case study in a company that's looking at how content is being consumed and adjusting their business models accordingly. Comcast does a really good job with it with Xfinity as well.
Okay.
So, and I think that, DirecTV was a little bit behind Dish in that respect. DirecTV's got an awesome product now that they're together with AT&T.
Right.
So all of a sudden those two companies came together, and they really, AT&T did a great job of leveraging DirecTV's content deals, and DirecTV did a great job of leveraging AT&T's technology and their backbone. And together, it's another great example. So these large media companies are also adapting. It takes them a little bit longer because they've got restrictions in their deals and things like that, where they can't all stream everything all the time. So, and then that's also piece of it's also partly the network's fault, right? So as a network programmer, I have the benefit that I own all my content. Right. So if you come to me and you are DirecTV and you say, hey, I want to put you on DirecTV, but I also want you available on Dish Anywhere and on Sling and on this and on that, I want it on VOD, I can say, okay, I can do all that because I have all rights to all media on my content because I own it. Well, but other channels don't have that, right? They're acquiring content from third parties. And when they acquire that content, they acquire it with really specific deals. Oh, okay, well, I'm giving you the slice of the pie, which is the broadcast rights. Well, so then they can't do a cable deal. They can't do VOD. They can't do, right? So it really restricts them from doing all those things. So if you're coming into a network, you also have to come in with the perspective of, well, whatever content we either produce or we buy, we have to buy all of the rights. So, I think that those are all things that people kind of take for granted, but then then all of a sudden they're saying, hey, well, why can't this show, which is on, I don't know, AMC, why can't I get it everywhere? Well, okay, it's because they only bought it for that particular platform.
Got you. No, that's interesting. Yeah, because even when I was launching this show, like the show airs on FM and podcasts and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. But for my point, it's like I had people literally say, like, why do you want to air on FM? Because that's dying. And I don't think it's dying. But, like, the thing that I always felt interesting about that is like, I want to air my show on the current platforms that are available today. If there's a new one tomorrow or one dies off, then I will stop airing on the died off one and I'll try to move to the new one. Like, I don't understand why sometimes like people have that like mindset of like, it can only air on one vertical. It's like, well, who cares? Like, why wouldn't, to your point, like, why wouldn't you want your content to air on many verticals as possible? And I understand it's more complicated than that sometimes, but like, for me as a content creator, I found other content creators come to me and said like, why are you doing that? It's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, it's almost like, for me, it's like, I want the most listeners. I don't really care how they consume the content. I just want them to listen to it, right? If you want to listen on FM, listen on FM. If you want to listen to it on your phone, listen to it on your phone. If you want it on the browser, listen to it on the browser. Don't care. I'll put it on all those mediums, which is interesting.
Well, and you bring up a good point. As a creator, you're controlling all of your rights. Mm-hmm. It's a funny thing that all of a sudden, the ownership of your content has really become a big deal because of all of the different platforms. I mean, you go back all the way to Star Wars. Mm-hmm. and you think about Lucas,
Yeah.
and you think about how he structured that deal. Okay, yeah, Fox, you get the film distribution rights, but I'm holding on to everything else, right? So he had merge, and then, at the time they were like, yeah, okay, fine, So I think that Fox has all the film. So then they also get TV and all those things. But then there was merchandising, and then there was like sequels and spin-offs and and this and that. So all of these other things that Lucas held on to is really what created Lucasfilm, right? It's really that's the backbone for the company that Disney ended up coming and buying, which was everything else.
Sure.
Right? So then the secret sauce to Lucas's empire was he owned his content.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right? And then you're doing the same thing. You're owning your content.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Just because like this has been for me a really fun kind of side project that is kind of taken off, for lack of a better term for it. And so, I think as a creator, and even talking to somebody like yourself, like just trying to figure out where to put it, how to promote it, how to get it in front of the most amount of people as possible has been kind of an interesting challenge, right? And I'm not complaining because I kind of like that challenge. But it's interesting, right? And then to your point, like a while ago, is you have content back since like the 50s that you can decide to air or not air, which is really actually quite fascinating. And I think we're at this like interesting point in history where you it's almost like an overload of content, right? Like you can binge watch for days or weeks the same show, right? Like I could literally watch, and they've been doing that on some channels right now over the kind of holidays. Like I think the best example is like Comedy Central and like MTV has been broadcasting like every episode of like The Big Bang Theory and Friends, right? And like if you want to watch every episode of those, you can, and it's like for weeks they've been going, right? And I'm not saying I've been doing that, but it's just interesting that you basically have the ability to do that, or like online content like through Prime or Netflix, you can like binge watch entire series for days, right? Like that's a really interesting space. So
well, and I think that's how, and people, and you've got to be willing. I mean, and I think it's all boils down to being got to be willing to understand that that's how people want to consume content. You can't force people to consume content in a different way.
Sure.
Right? They're going to consume it the way that they want to consume it. They want to consume it. If they want to watch your show on a schedule, on a television network, that's awesome.
Sure.
It's great. If they want to watch it on demand at a different time, that's fine too. And if they want to watch it all together in one giant session over a weekend, that's got to be okay too.
Sure.
You've got to be flexible and willing to let consumers dictate how they watch their own content.
Sure.
That the idea that something is only going to, outside of sports,
sure,
there really isn't anything that you've got to watch at a specific time and a specific day. Sports really is the only thing there that and it really is the lifeblood of cable television, right? And that's changing also, with all of the leagues kind of controlling their own digital rights and things like that. But the idea of letting your consumer tell you rather than you tell your consumer, it's a little disarming for a traditional media person to accept.
Sure.
I was lucky enough that I was there at the beginning of mobile content in 2005, and that mindset, I shifted my mindset, 12 years ago.
Sure.
So wherever I've gone after that has really been about, okay, oh, now they're doing it this way. Okay, cool. Let's go see how do we address the consumer there. So it's more about just making sure that people are seeing it, because if they want to watch it on Amazon and you're not on Amazon, well then they're going to watch something else.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, for sure.
So
right?
then that could then cost you somebody who would say, oh, you know what? I'm flipping the channels at home, and oh wow, look, it's coming up here on Buzzer. I'm going to watch it on Buzzer too, right? So that they may be primarily maybe an Amazon consumer, but people are browsing their EPGs to find content all the time.
Yeah.
So you may be costing yourself eyeballs on your television set by ignoring the consumer on Amazon, and vice versa. You may be costing yourself somebody who's on Amazon going, oh wow, I saw this really cool old episode of Match Game. I really wish I could watch it on. Oh wow, it's not here. That's a bummer. Well, you know what? If and we are now, it's all of a sudden that viewer who you maybe have caught on your channel is now consuming on Amazon, and you're generating revenue on both.
Sure.
So I hate to be mercenary about it and always bring it back to revenue, but at the end of the day, you got to make money on your content, right?
Yep.
So this isn't I'd love to be able to do it for free and not have to worry about the money of it, but at the end of the day, we have people that we hire, and we have people that that we employ, and we want to keep them employed, and that's kind of how I look at it. Every dollar I make, I get to save a job.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Yeah.
But it really is about just saying, hey, let's find the consumers, let's find how they're consuming content. Now let's put content let's put compelling content in front of them. And the definition of compelling content has changed, right?
Yeah.
Like you could, crazy cat videos are just as compelling for some people as an episode of Game of Thrones.
Yep. Fair enough. So, I 100% agree, man. Yeah. It's interesting,
right? So
there's
content for everybody, and I think that's also something that people need to understand is that okay, so I work in a particular genre that's got very passionate fans.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that there's not a marketplace for like I said, everything from Game of Thrones all the way down to cat videos.
Sure. No, that's interesting, man. So we're kind of coming to the end of the show, but I really want to kind of cover your involvement with the Media Excellence Awards and how did you get involved in that, and why do you think it's kind of important?
Well, look, I started working on it back when I was at Amp'd.
Okay.
It was just an idea, and we really hadn't put it together. And Sarah Miller, she came to me and she said, "Hey, would you help advise on this?" And we did. And I think it was probably about a year and a half later. I was at a different company, and I might have been at Sony already.
Okay.
And she launched it. So it was 10 years ago. So that would have been 2008. Yeah, I was at Sony when she first did it. And, it really is, especially at the time, because it started off as the Mobile Excellence Award.
Yeah, right.
And it was really important to recognize people who were breaking ground in this space, whether it was from a music standpoint or a traditional video standpoint, or even things that were more kind of public service, charitable, safety. Those kinds of things were also really important because it was a new medium, and there was nobody recognizing the achievements of those people who were really breaking new ground and who were doing fantastic things with a medium that was like literally in its nascent stages. So it started off with mobile, and it was fantastic, and it really has been a great experience for me because as somebody who I consider myself kind of one of the earlier people in the mobile space.
Sure.
It's nice to see it have grown to the point where we had to change the name.
Yeah,
because
that's interesting.
Mobile's no longer just your phone. It's laptops and tablets are just as important to that content on the go consumption as mobile phones are. And so, you go from a place where casual games were the thing to the point where people are watching, full episodes of shows on Netflix and on Hulu on their phones, on the bus on the way to school, or on, like, my son. I've also seen it grow with my kids.
Sure.
My son's 15, and he takes the bus to school, and it's about a 20-minute bus ride to school, and he'll watch a full episode of something, or
sure.
He'll watch. I think he started binging White Collar. Over the holidays.
It's a great show.
And so he'll probably get on the bus today and watch half an episode of White Collar on the way to school and half an episode on the way home.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So you start you're thinking about that, and you're like, wow, man, when I was 15 years old, like, I never would have imagined. The only thing I had was one of those little handheld football games.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They had the little red dots on it.
Yeah.
That you didn't know exactly what they meant. You didn't know how to play the game.
Yeah.
Right? So that's as sophisticated as I had in my hand.
Sure.
And you see kind of what mobile content has become, and it's become just content, right? So that's why we changed it to Media Excellence Awards this year, and I'm really proud of what Sarah put together and what the team put together, in that it's a great opportunity to not just say, oh, here are the big stars, or here are the big media companies, and they're doing this, and here's a pat on the back and whatever for your movie that cost you $300 million to make. You're looking at real innovators who may have done things on a totally shoestring budget, but they broke new ground.
Sure.
And to me, as somebody who really loves that particular aspect of my job and of my business, it's one of those things that you become very proud in being able to recognize that.
Sure. No, that's great, man. And that's January 18th, and people can get more information at media, the letter X, and then awards.com. And I'm actually going to be there, Mark, so we'll get to meet in person.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, so I'm excited
good.
to come down, actually, and meet. I've had a bunch of people that are, that have done the media awards, over the last decade, kind of on the show, and it's been cool getting kind of the story of how everything kind of came to be, and their involvement kind of early on, and the transition. So it's cool, right? It's been an interesting ride, but we're coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close with mentioning where people can, get more information about yourself and Buzzer online.
So Buzzer, you can go to let's see, I think it's buzzer.tv is our website, and we, we're, as I mentioned, we're what's called a .2 or a digital sub channel. So if you're in Los Angeles, we're channel 13.2.
Okay.
I believe in New York, we're channel 9.2.
Interesting.
And we're available on Dish nationwide. But we're in about 50 different markets right now, and 60 different markets. We have about 2/3 of the country covered from a broadcast standpoint, and then we're on different cable operators around the country. So, but at buzzer.tv, that's your best spot to find us and find information, and you can get your local listings and all that stuff. But I'm just excited to bring this content to a new audience, and I was really, really pleased when we got our first. We weren't rated for a really long time, and we finally did a deal with Nielsen to start getting ratings and demographics and things like that. And I was really, really happy to see that. You might think that a channel that has shows from the 50s all the way through the 80s would have a predominantly, I would say, retired audience, right?
Uh-huh.
We have a ton of young people watching the channel.
Interesting.
There is this core group of 25 to 35-year-old men who are watching Match Game and they're watching Family Feud.
Interesting.
And then they come back in prime, to watch Password and Tattletales and things like that. So it really has been really gratifying to me to be able to see that this content's not just touching the people who feel nostalgic about it,
Sure.
but we're opening the eyes to a whole new generation of people that, this stuff's really fun. And, people in the 70s and the 60s, they were so much more willing to be goofy on television.
Sure.
and be less self-conscious, that it's kind of refreshing to be able to bring that to people and to see young people see that and feel comfortable with it to the point where they're coming back on a regular basis. So
Sure.
I'm really happy about that.
No, that's great, Mark. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to seeing you, I guess, next week now. Again, thanks for doing this, man, and we'll talk next week, and have a good rest of your day.
All right, Kevin, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.